So this is just a quick review of what we can do with Desmos, the online graphing calculator. So if you're using a computer, the first thing you're going to do is go to desmos.com/calculator. If you have a smart device, if you have a phone, a tablet, iOS or Android, there is a Desmos app available, and you can do all of this through the app if you prefer, rather than using the browser. So I just wanted to give a quick recap of what we can do here using Desmos. So first thing we can do, over on the left hand side, we can enter our equation of a line. So let's do something simple. Let's do y equals, say, 2x minus 4. And we can see our line shows up immediately. So what can we do with this line? Well, let's see. First off, you'll notice that on the line, 2 points have already been highlighted for us in gray. Okay, and if you click on them, you can see what those coordinates are, and the coordinates will stay. So here, 2, 0, that is our x-intercept, and 0, negative 4, that is our y-intercept. Those points are going to be highlighted already. You don't need to do anything. And what's nice about Desmos is the fact that any important points, it will highlight for you. If we put a second equation on here, so if I type in y equals, say, negative x plus 2, or let's do plus 3, let's say, again, we have the y-intercept of the blue line, we have the x-intercept of the blue line, and they'll also give us the point where the two lines cross, which is nice and handy. So there's how we can very quickly just get an equation on there. Now, if we want to read any point on our line, we can do that very easily just by clicking and dragging on the line itself. So if I click on the line, you can see that wherever I move my cursor, wherever I move this point, it'll give me the coordinates for it. So let's say I'm trying to figure out when x is 4, I can see y is 4. If x is negative 1, I can go down here and I get negative 2. Or sorry, a positive 1. It's negative 2 rather. Now, as you can see, this is all well and good, but it can be a little bit finicky if you're looking for an exact point. So there's a better way we can find an exact point, and I'll show you that in just a second. Now, when we're over here and looking at our equation of the line, we can edit how this looks. If you click on the little gear icon list here, we have some options. If you click on this, you can change what color your line is going to be, and you can also change whether you want a dashed line or a dotted line. If you're trying to represent different things or distinguish between multiple lines, you can do that. The other thing you can do, if you hit the gear icon and you click on this, it'll create a table of values for you, which can be very useful. And it created negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, and 2 for our x values, and you can see those points are all highlighted there for you already, which is nice and handy. Okay, let me erase that and I'll put my original back on here. Y equals 2x minus 4. Okay. So what else can we do? Well, you can see what I'm doing here. You can move your graph around very easily. Just click and drag. If you want, you can zoom in and out. So if you're scrolling using a mouse, you can do pinch and zoom if you have a touch screen, or you can just use this plus or minus over on the right hand side for you, and you can try to get your graph to look exactly how you want it. So let's say we had something maybe 2x instead of minus 4. What if we did minus 40? So you can see it really goes off very quickly. So let me reset my graph. Over here, you can see the home button. This will reset your zoom so that it's about negative 10 to 10. This is kind of the default level. So you can see here my line is actually not showing on my screen. So in order to find it, I might have to zoom all the way out like this. The other thing you could do is you can manually set what you want your settings to be. So what I could do here is if I go into the wrench settings, I can manually type in what I want my x and my y axis to be. So my x axis, maybe I don't need any of the negatives, so I'll only put this at 0 for the x axis, and I'll bring this up to, say, 20. So I'm going to go 0 to 20. And then on the y axis, I know my y-intercept is negative 40, so maybe I'll go from negative 50 all the way to positive 50, like this. And there gives me a nice view of my graph. And then again, from here, I can zoom in and out and adjust how I want to see things. So that's how we can move our graph around, change our scale, get a nice good graph on the screen. Now, if we want to, say, put this into a report, if I want to share this image, there's a couple different ways I can do it. If I go up here, here's our share icon. If I click on that, it gives me the Desmos link. So if I copy and paste this link and send it to someone, they'll open up this graph and then they can manipulate the Desmos graph. But let's say I want, maybe I'm putting this into a lab report, or I'm typing this up in Google Docs and I want to put an image of my graph on there. What we're going to do is say export image right here. And in the screen, it gives you just a quick little image of what your graph looks like. Now, we can choose different sizes. If you prefer a rectangle as opposed to a square, we can do that. If we maybe are doing this on a projector, I can make my lines a little bit thicker, however I want. From here, we can just download the PNG file and then import it to whatever program we want. Or what I often do is just from the preview that they give me, if you right-click and just say copy image, then if I can go over to a Google document, and I can just paste that image right in there. So I could do this as part of like I said, a lab report. I could do this as part of my homework if I'm typing up my notes, and have my Desmos graph included right in there. So that's nice and handy. So that's just a quick little preview, or not preview, but review, I should say, about how we can use Desmos. Now, I promised earlier as well, what if I wanted to get an exact value? So let me go back to my original equation. I'm going to reset my graph. I can find a point on this line by kind of scrubbing it like this. But what if I wanted a more exact value and I don't want to scrub? So what I could do is I could create another line, so below my equation. What if I wanted to know, well, what is my y coordinate when x is 3? So what I can do is I can just type in x equals 3, and it creates another line for me. In this case, it's a vertical line because it's x equals 3. And remember what I said is whenever you have two lines, it highlights the intersection for you. So I can see that on my original line, I have the point 3, 2. And I can change that to whatever I want. If I wanted at -1, I can pull my point right off just like that. Now, when you have a value like this, notice that Desmos creates a slider for me. So that's the other thing I could do, is I could just manually move this left or right and find whatever point of intersection I want. But for our purposes, maybe typing it in makes more sense. So if I want to know what happens, when x is 2.35, I would never be able to scrub to that. It would be very difficult, but I can find the exact y value just like that. I can do the exact same thing if I have a y value and want an x value. So if I say, okay, well, what is x when y is 7? So I type in y equals 7. That's off my graph, so I'll just move it up a little bit, and we can see x is 5.5 in this case. So if you need to read points off your graph very quickly, that's how we can do it. All right, so that's just a quick review on Desmos, and hopefully you can use that moving forward. We will be using Desmos for more complicated things moving forward, so having just this basic understanding is going to be very valuable to you. So I would say jump in, play with it, type in some equations, and if you have any questions, email us. Take care.